Hello and welcome to another edition of the In Context podcast. You're back with Ian Williamson and Gary Matthews from Medhurst Ministries. And again, we're looking at Spurgeon and preaching to the working class. Hello, Gary. How are you doing, brother?
I'm all right, mate. Good to see you.
Yeah, long time no see.
Been a while, mate.
Right, brother, let's get back into it. We're looking at Spurgeon and preaching to the working class. Uh, I know you've read the dissertation that I'd written on this, and I think what surprised me was the similarities between the working class communities and the church in the time of Spurgeon in the 1800s and today. The church was abandoning working class communities. Christians who were getting saved who were working class were assimilating, were getting social uplift and moving from them communities. Uh, there was liberalisms within a lot of the churches, heresy being preached. Uh, Calvinism and Reformed theology was seen as ungodly and egotistical by some, and the church and leadership were dominated by academic white middle class preachers, pastors, and church leaders. So basically, what was happening in the time of Spurgeon is happening today in the UK, and I think Spurgeon's response is an awesome response. He's looking to address that problem, and he acknowledges that if uh, the majority of people in the church are middle class, then the working class need to be reached first with the gospel, and then we need to be training up those working class Christians for ministry so they can go out and reach other working class Christians who are being forgotten by the church. So, hence, what happened was Thomas Medhurst, a working class robe maker, got saved under Spurgeon's preaching. He was attending his church and he went out excited about the name of Jesus, preaching to his local community down the docks, to the drunks and the prostitutes, to the working men, to those who've been forgotten by the church, and saw several people saved and baptized. But his preaching was unorthodox. It wasn't traditional. It was far from academic, and the church members of the church that he belonged to weren't happy. So they asked Spurgeon to stop him from preaching. Uh, Thomas Medhurst responded by saying, "If you want to stop me preaching, you must cut off my head." Unfortunately, Spurgeon didn't do that. He kept his head, and he was also allowed to train for ministry from his own personal expense. Spurgeon paid for Thomas Medhurst to be trained theologically and set up the Pastors' College, and that is where we get our name, Medhurst Ministries, because we want to replicate what Spurgeon did with Thomas Medhurst, first by taking the gospel to the working class and helping train and equip working class pastors, preachers, gospel workers, and basically any member who wants to train to be better equipped to take the gospel out to their friends and neighbours. So there we go, a little brief historical recap on why Medhurst Ministries exists, but also just sharing the backdrop of how similar uh, our society is compared to the society in the time of Spurgeon. And I think what we'll do is this week we'll just look at some of the things that Spurgeon did to make training more accessible for the working class and why he trained the way he did. So, Gary, we have looked last week at recruitment already. We looked at how recruitment from Spurgeon happened a lot from his church because he was already doing a lot of ministry to the working class, but also other working class Christians were being encouraged to apply to the pastors' college by their own pastors and churches to train for ministry from further afield. He even trained people from the US and Africa. He trained missionaries. The training was fantastic. We looked at the importance of relationship and local church-based ministry, of how everyone from the pastor's college would be living with a local church family if they weren't married themselves. And then this week we're going to look at actually what he did regarding the training, what training to be a pastor and a preacher looked like with Spurgeon. So first of all, we'll look at how Spurgeon and his training was theologically robust and Christ-centered. So it's funny that the training we offer because it's simple, because it's accessible, and because it's non-academic, some people think that the training we offer is therefore not theologically robust. So,
Mm.
what's your experience? Does theological training have to be full of highfalutin words, or can you get deep theological truths and access them in a more simple manner? What's your experience been, brother?
So like I said on the last one, so I tried a proper theology college, proper Bible college, and I really struggled with it, to be honest. Do you know what I mean? I struggled with all the big essays and the big books and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I struggled with it.
Mm,
Uh, I think keep it simple.
yeah,
I think keep it as simple as you can, accessible as you can. And it doesn't have to be for a degree, does it? Do you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be so you can get a few numbers at your end of it.
yeah,
It doesn't have to be uh, to make you really clever. You want to understand what the Bible says, and theology is good to study. Doctrine is good to study. The Bible is good to study. But I think make it in a simple, accessible way uh, for working class people.
mm,
Uh, yeah,
yeah. And Spurgeon was huge on doctrine. He held to a reformed theology. But again, I mentioned earlier that he had attacks. Some people said, especially those in the press and those with more liberal beliefs, that he was egotistical. And then we had hyper Calvinists who were doubting his salvation. Yet,
mm,
despite this opposition that he had from within the church and within the national press, he kind of stuck to his guns. He was unashamed of his beliefs, and he taught his students to craft sermons and preach in a deep, theologically robust manner. So he wasn't teaching students to dumb theology down. He was he
yeah,
was he was a big proponent of robust theological training. Yet he did it in a way that was accessible to all.
mm,
He encouraged his students to choose a text not to impress the congregation, but to fit their spiritual needs of the congregation, which is something you mentioned earlier, isn't it? About the church you're at now. Like the pastor, what did the pastor say about knowing the needs of his church?
yeah. So there was like so. I think it was like I can't remember the full context of the conversation. So we was talking about or sometimes the difficulties of writing a sermon because sometimes writing a sermon is not easy.
Yeah,
And we was talking about I think we was talking about how you choose the scripture, the passage that you're going to talk on, or whether you just do it book by book, just go
mm,
through verses at a time, um, and then how you apply that to the people that you're preaching to. And we
yeah,
were saying it's probably easier to apply it. You can apply it more. So if you're part of a church and you know the church, you know the people, you know the struggles, it's easier to apply that kind of directly to them, isn't it? If you
yeah,
know the people that you're preaching to, rather than like just going to a church you don't know the people, just doing a random thing. So
mm,
yeah, if you know the people that you're preaching to, you can make it more relevant to them, to their struggles or their battles and what they need to eat
yeah,
at that time.
yeah. And again, I think what Spurgeon also did was knowing that he needed to preach the sermon to himself, and he encouraged the students to do that as well. That he said they must first preach the sermon to themselves. That it must always be Christ centered,
Mm,
and that the sermon must be filled with prayer, praying for the congregation to accept the sermon well, praying for himself to accept the sermon well and understand what he's preaching,
yeah,
and just praying before preparing the sermon, praying during the preparation of the sermon, praying uh, after the sermon's been prepared for the congregation, and then praying after you've preached,
yeah,
so that you and the congregation take what's been preached away with them and apply it to their lives. Yeah, huge on not just the academic side of things, not just on the technical side of things, but on the supernatural and spiritual side of things, which I think many of us today can, uh, with the pressures of ministry, if you're running out of time, if you feel time pressured, if you're spending more time on getting a fancy conclusion,
yeah.
often you can forget to pray. How do you find that praying? for me, often I'm praying like, Lord, I'm really sorry that I've not spent enough time praying this week. Next week I'll change. Just let me get through this sermon.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
change.
I'm the same. So especially like the week before the sermon, I'm like, I'm deep in that closet. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm like, God, I can't do it. I do saturate it in prayer. I'm getting better at it. I'm getting better at it. But the prayer is better. Uh, yeah, especially before it, because I'm just like, I just feel absolutely broken. I just
yeah,
feel like, man, especially when I'm preaching the sermon to myself first. Uh, and then, yes, I spend a lot of prayer, a lot of time in prayer before it. Uh, I get sidetracked after it. I need to start praying more after it because I'm just drained.
yeah, yeah.
To be fair, I was like thinking, yes, I was thinking yesterday. So like, I led a church service yesterday for the first time as well, and I was drained after it. And I was like saying to my pastor, I don't know how they do it week in, week out, pastors. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because it is quite tiring. But yeah, definitely prayer.
yeah. And again, being Christ centered, and sometimes I would prepare a sermon, and at the end I was like, oh, I've not even mentioned Jesus here. What? Like, how
Yeah,
does this point to Jesus? And again, I think sometimes there's such I think this goes across cultures, whether you're working class or middle class. But I think that it's right and it's godly that we want to prepare a sermon well, and that we want to preach well, and that we want people to understand it and even enjoy it. We don't want people to be bored,
no,
but our priority must always be pointing to Jesus first. And this was what Spurgeon was huge on, making sure that everyone who preached was preaching a Christ-centered sermon. But so often I think I would write a sermon and think, oh, how do I shove the gospel in here? And it was rather than the gospel being central to what I was preaching, it would be like added on, disjointed at the end or the middle. Or and again, what do you think is the pressure behind us sometimes forgetting the main point of the sermon, which is Jesus?
yeah. I don't know, to be fair. I don't know if we just like, yeah, we can just get sidetracked, can't we? Maybe if we're just like trying to, I don't know. I don't know, yeah. Try and be, it's so easy to do. Trying to just fill your sermon with just information. I do it sometimes. I had one guy give me a bit of feedback
Yeah,
because I'm like, so we agreed with like give each other feedback on our sermon deliveries, our sermons, etc., just to help us grow, which I think is a good thing. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
And then on one of my sermons, I think he said you put loads of irrelevant information in it, loads of extra scriptures that you didn't really need to put in. So I think you just like put too much in it. I think it's learning, isn't it?
yeah,
I think the more that we practice sermon writing and sermon preaching, hopefully we'll get a little bit better by God's grace to shine more light on Him.
mm,
But yeah, I think some of the sermons I was just putting too much information. I just felt the pressure of, I don't know, conforming for it to be similar. I don't know.
yeah. I think again, especially when you start off preaching, there was a pressure for me to. I just was desperate for people to not to give me praise, but I just wanted it to go well. I wanted
Yeah,
people to enjoy it,
yeah,
to benefit from it, and um, you'd know the mistakes you made the week before, and you want that iron them out. Though I was constantly looking at improving again, which isn't a bad thing. But if that is the main thing, it becomes an issue,
yeah,
and pride can easily creep in.
yeah,
But then, as after you've become a bit more seasoned and you've been preaching for a few years, that I think I had a little season where I was like kind of content and comfortable in preaching, and then after a while you think, oh, am I becoming boring? Have I used that illustration before? Have I used that application before? Do I need to? Yeah, and the pressure's on again, and you're thinking, I don't
yeah,
want to just be regurgitating old stuff. I want to be fresh. I want to. And again, flipping heck, I can't remember a sermon illustration from like a fortnight ago, never mind 5 years ago. So why do I think the congregation can or even
yeah.
cares? Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
We proper put pressure on ourselves, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah, I think some of it is insecurity, some of it's
Yeah,
pride, and again, it's just some of it's just having that awesome responsibility that you've got
yeah,
to deliver the word of God. You do want to do it with fear and trembling, don't you? You want to do it
yeah.
to see the seriousness of it, but it's tough. It's hard work.
It is. It is indeed. I'm like pretty much. So I've preached a few times, but I'm getting more and more opportunities now. Do you know what I mean? And I'm feeling the pressure of it.
Mm.
it's not easy, is it? And I'm like, especially if you've not been, you just again like you just been through in the deep end and you just got to do it. You don't really been taught how to do it. Where Spurgeon taught his people, I imagine, didn't he? It's how
Yeah,
to put a sermon together. They come alongside him. They was trained, come alongside the pastors and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's especially if you've not come from a life of like doing any studying, doing any schooling, doing all that kind of stuff. Although it's not a sermon's not completely academic. Don't get me wrong, but there's some academic in there, and you need to be able to study to be able to do it.
yeah.
But
And how do you take feedback? Because Spurgeon got feedback that he asked for and that he didn't ask for. There was, like you said, lots of stuff within the national news as well as uh, from people within his congregation and other church leaders criticising him, giving him negative. How do you take? Well, well. For starters, he got negative press from a lot of people, but he equally got positive. Probably more so got positive.
yeah,
Uh, One reporter from the Evening Star described his preaching style as relational, and that how all that listened to him felt interested and at home. And he also talks about how that Spurgeon crafts his sermons to engage his audience with contextual illustrations, that his sermons are laced with humour and imagery, and that he takes the hearer on a personal and practical journey as he appeals to the common human experience and aspirations. He also says that uh, he uses images that are drawn from the homes of common people. So he's got the positive ones. We'll look at this positive one in more detail. Uh, but first of all, I just want to answer how you first of all respond to negative feedback and how you respond to positive feedback, and what do you find easiest to handle?
yeah. So um, I really struggled. I really struggle with positive feedback.
Mm,
I struggle with that. I struggle with people saying, "Oh, that you've done well." I don't, like I say, I don't preach for a pat on the back. I don't preach for people to say, "Well done, Gary." None of it's me. It's all about Jesus. Do you know what I mean? Uh, I, I really struggle with that, especially quite early on. If anybody give me feedback, I'd just be like, "Oh, to God be the glory, Jesus be the glory." You know what I mean? It's not me. It's not him. Where I've kind of learned now to say, "Oh, thank you."
yeah,
You know what I mean? We should appreciate the work that the preachers put in to do it as well, and appreciate the preacher. Do you know what I mean? Ultimately, God gets all the glory, but I've learned just to say thank you. I've learned not to cringe because I've never
yeah,
been good at accepting things that I've done well because I've never thought I've done anything well. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
Uh, so I've got better at learning to accept positive feedback. Uh, and then I quite like it as well now. So not as in, oh, like me, but I use it to try and continue to do something that they say has been helpful or
Yeah.
good or not, or change it. So or negative feedback, I'm kind of all right taking that sometimes.
Mm,
It depends who it's come from, how it's come,
yeah.
and whether I've asked for it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I had a lady come up to me yesterday. She said, "I listened to one of your sermons the other day." She's like, "It was all right. I'm not saying it was bad." But she said, "Yeah, you done better today." Today I wasn't even giving him a sermon. I was like leading, but thank
Yeah.
you. I find taking negative stuff back probably easier than taking positive, to be fair.
Yeah.
Although I'm getting better at it. I think the positive's good as well. Like, I think the negative feedback's good because I
Mm,
think it can like help me to look at things. So a few weeks ago, well, there was a few different things. So like I get really nervous in the pulpit, and I was like bouncing up and down, and I walk up and down the stage, and a few people found that quite distracting, which I completely, I completely understand. She was like, "You're like a jack in the box. You just need to chill out, mate."
yeah.
But yeah, and then like I said before, so there was some people I asked for feedback from, and they were just saying like about what was actually in the sermon. Do you know what I mean? How helpful it was or it wasn't, and then sometimes yeah, I was like again just learning how to write, and I think yeah, just different things. So I've took it away, looked at it, and thought, all right, yeah, how can I change that? That the sermon can be uh, more impacting for them, more relevant for them. Yeah,
Mm. Yeah, I think similar. I used to cringe when I got uh, positive feedback. And again, just I think it's just the way we've grown up as well. So
Yeah,
first of all, I just think, oh, you don't mean it. You're
yeah.
just saying that because you've got to, because you're a Christian, and that's what Christians do. And then other times I was like, ah, that like it's too you can't accept praise, it's too ungodly. But I think a lot of it was just again not used to getting praise. I mean, at
Yeah, yeah,
school, I was always getting put on report and excluded, not never getting praise. So it wasn't
yeah.
something that I was used to. So when I got it, like even getting like birthday cards and stuff like that, like I find it really weird and cringy. So
I do. I
again,
still do.
yeah, it's just a bit like yeah, it's hard, isn't it? But it's unfair not to accept
Yeah,
positive feedback because people are blessed by being nice. It's the same when people want to give you a gift, not
yeah,
accepting it. It says it's better to give than to receive, and it is. So we're stopping people from being blessed by blessing us. So I've
yeah,
had to learn to take that. And again, it's similar. I find it easier to take negative feedback unless
yeah.
it's stuff like I had one person who'd waited must have been 10 minutes after I'd been preaching. Do you know when you start chatting with people afterwards? I was visiting the church and he waited at least 10 minutes to come up to me and say, I can tell you're from Middlesbrough because your grammar's appalling. Do you realise when you say you use the past tense? I was like, what?
Oh,
You've actually waited 10 minutes.
oh man.
He didn't mention anything that was right or wrong theologically. He just like wanted to pull me up on my grammar, which yeah, obviously was a barrier to this fella. But anyway,
I think it's so
I
good.
was never
Like,
taught grammar at school anyway, so that's my excuse. I was failed by the education authority.
yeah, I was the same. I got kicked out, man. I had a whole tutor. He was terrible. I'd never do any work with him. He used to take me out for drives in his car. But I like to give feedback sometimes as well. Do you know what I mean? Uh, I generally give more positive feedback than negative feedback. But if I can't accept it, I don't want to make other people feel uncomfortable. And I think it's good to give feedback, positive and negative.
Yeah, yeah. I've just got to learn to be a bit more middle class in my feedback, I think, and
That's
learn
so
to say
blunt.
things without saying them.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's just out the way that we say it, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mad. Yeah, but again, I think it was just really interesting how this reporter who from the Evening Star, I don't think he was a Christian. He might have been,
Mhm.
he was just talking about the preaching style of Spurgeon being relational, and that everyone who listened to him felt interested in that home, and that how his preaching had contextual illustration, that it was laced with humour, that the imagery was fantastic, and that he appealed to the common human experience and aspiration, and that all the illustrations that he used were drawn from the homes of common people. So again, huge on being relational.
Was that
The
a negative feedback, did you say?
No, that was a positive one, yeah.
That was positive. I was going to say, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So again, like ticking all the boxes for what we've seen as working class cultural kind of identity, being relational, loving imagery that is local and relatable, and having humour, uh, and applying stuff that is relevant.
Yeah,
So again, a lot of people talk about Spurgeon and love him being the prince of preachers, but miss that he was and but like the humor isn't reflected in the preaching. They're not contextual, that they don't draw their illustrations from the common people. Do you know what I mean? I think I'm just
mm,
so shocked at how working class friendly Spurgeon is, and how the UK pastors and preachers love him and see him as the prince of preachers, but not many people reflect him in the way that he contextualized to the common people or trained common people for ministry. It baffles me.
yeah. Especially if it like had so much of a positive impact on people, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you think I'd be I want to be like that. I want to pick up some of them characteristics and them traits and them skills to do.
I think the pick up on is like theological robustness,
Yeah,
the academic side of him, and his kind of flowery language that he uses, but miss out on his character and on
yeah,
his
yeah,
desire to reach all
yeah,
people.
yeah.
And yeah, it's strange, isn't it? What we can focus on when we like something, we focus on a rather than something as a whole. We'll often focus on an aspect rather than the whole
Yeah.
thing.
Do you think people that have got characteristics similar to him already pick up on them things? Do
Yeah,
you
I
know what I
think
mean?
you pick up on what you find attractive, don't you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think it's like usually it's a bit like when you meet somebody for who you end up marrying. When you first meet them, you just focus on all the things you find attractive. It's
Yeah, yeah,
when you
true.
get into marriage that you find the things that are annoying, don't you? So uh, like me biting my nails and leaving them on the side of the bedside table and stuff like that.
Oh, mate.
Yeah. But it's also, yeah, it's fascinating how we talked about working class culture being quite emotional, and that how we as working class men and preachers we're quite emotional in how we respond to things, but also how we preach. And that same reporter talks about how Spurgeon used anecdotes that are emotive and realistic, and that his delivery is rough and has a graphic force and faithfulness. So he's rough. He's rough around the edges. He's gifted in preaching and speaking, public speaking, but he's like he's a manly man. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
rough as
straight
a
to the
badger.
point.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
forceful. He's direct. He's blunt,
yeah,
and he's faithful to the text.
yeah,
Yeah, but I think that's often missed as well. Where often we can be told as working class men, preachers, people, Christians, that we can be too blunt and too rough. Yet he was lauded for being rough and
yeah,
blunt, Spurgeon. And even I think people now, people who think we're rough will read books about Spurgeon and laugh at how blunt he was.
yeah,
But when they're faced with that same bluntness, in reality, it's off-putting.
yeah,
Yeah. I think, again, that Spurgeon taught those that he was training that every passage that is preached must be explained clearly. So no matter how difficult or challenging the passage is, that passage is to be explained clearly. Uh, and he also says that he doesn't just want uh, the minds to be moved by the preaching, but also the emotions. So he's somebody who's big on emotions. Sees emotions as being given by God.
yeah,
Uh, that if we're getting taught about the beauty of God and His salvation, then we should have joy in our hearts.
yeah,
If we're looking at Gethsemane and the cross, we should have sadness in our hearts. Our emotions are there. The Bible is an emotional book. It brings up anger at injustice. It brings up joy at the salvation. It brings up grief at sin. It's yeah, it's definitely an emotional book if you read it.
yeah,
So I think our preaching should be preached with emotion, and we should be looking for the response of our hearers to respond emotionally as well.
yeah. I think we was talking about that a couple of weeks ago, weren't we?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And again, I think for me, another thing that this reporter said was that Spurgeon uses illustrations that illuminate the text that supply applications to the hearers, so they know how to respond to what they've heard. Again, that often we might have left our hearers thinking, "What was the point in that?"
yeah,
Spurgeon taught his preachers never to do that, never to leave
yeah,
his congregation wondering what was the point. They should have
yeah,
clearly know how they should respond, because uh, every part of the Bible points to Jesus, and there's a response that we must have to that, isn't there? Whether that is repentance, whether that's thankfulness, whether that's to reflect Him in a way.
yeah,
Yeah. So preaching clearly and simply and emotionally and bluntly doesn't void it of being theologically robust or deep. Uh, we're having deep meaning. Simple is the best, according to Spurgeon. So I think that's something that we need to remind ourselves, because I think as I've got on, I've tried to develop my preaching, which it should develop, so you go deeper into the text.
yeah,
But it as you get deeper into the text, as your understanding grows, the way you explain it should also remain simply and become more simpler.
yeah. I like that. I like
Yeah. So here's another thing we talked on the last podcast about appearance and the personality of the preacher. And uh, I think I have some justification now for not liking people who preach in suits. and justifying why I'm preaching a Peppa Pig t-shirts.
Oh,
But Spurgeon said that he had a loathing for lifeless clinical preachers, and he urged his students to preach with personality. He urged his students to preach with humour and emotions, but also by being honest in their personal need for the gospel.
yeah,
He didn't want anything to distract from the gospel, so he didn't want the humor. He just wanted it to illuminate it, and that included the dress as well. He didn't want his students to bore his congregation, so he told them that he shouldn't preach for too long, and that the sermon should be catered to the listener's needs, not the preacher's personal preferences. Which I wish a few of the preachers I've listened to had been taught by Spurgeon. And I think a few of the people who've listened to me preach recently wished I had as well.
I think there's a lot to learn from the man, isn't there?
Yeah,
There is a lot to learn from him.
yeah. But I think what he says about clothing is really interesting. He mentions to his students that their attire, their clothing, their behaviour could negatively affect how the sermon's received, a bit like what we were talking about in last week's episode. And he talks about the importance of clothing and how the preacher's desire to appear official or religious is wrong. That you shouldn't be trying to look official or religious. You should just kind of be you. And he also warns against being a fashion conscious dandy. So basically, that you should just get up there and be you. You shouldn't be trying to impress people by looking official or religious
Yeah.
or fashion conscious,
Yeah,
because that'll just distract people from hearing the gospel.
yeah,
He just
like that.
wanted the preacher to be clean and tidy, yet dress in a manner that doesn't bring attention to himself. That sounds right, doesn't it? And
Yeah,
again, so it's figuring out what in your context would bring attention to yourself.
yeah,
So, like the Peppa Pig T-shirt is just going to bring attention to you wherever you preach.
not good, is it?
Well, he also talks about his mannerisms and gestures and speech need to be monitored, so they don't distract people from the gospel. And again, he was a nightmare. There was one guy who had a stutter, and he like mocked him for his stutter. You know, like,
Oh,
he'd be cancelled now in today's church for
would
doing
be.
that. But he was so bang on, not distracting from the gospel, that he would uh, like pick people upon like mannerisms that were annoying or frustrating. I dread to think what you'd say about me. I'm constantly going.
I'm like constantly drinking water because my mouth dries out. I'm like walking up and down all over the place.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Well, it was a bit like what you were saying there, walking up and down the stage behind the pulpit, and
Yeah,
like I tap things. Yeah, I've got quite a few mannerisms that I think there's stuff you can work on. He doesn't want us to have so many mannerisms. Spurgeon was saying, like, don't be jumping around like a jack in the box, but neither don't be stiff or mechanical.
yeah,
He wanted you to kind of speak with kind of passion and
yeah,
and look alive, but not so much alive that
yeah,
people are wondering like, are you juggling or
yeah, yeah. I think a lot of it's nerves, isn't it?
yeah, yeah,
So for me, it's nerves. I'm just feeling the pressure of it. So I think, like you say, a lot of it can be changed, can be homed in on.
mm,
I think if we make it practical, if we try to do it, I think that's why it's sometimes good to have that feedback of people, isn't it? Because
yeah,
what we might think's all right, other people are thinking no, and it's quite difficult as well. It's like what affects one person won't affect another person as well.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, again, I think mainly he was talking about pronouncing words correctly,
I'm
not
terrible
acting.
for that. Yeah, I can't even speak. I'm like baby, baby.
Yeah, where your stuff there, it says that Spurgeon said that you shouldn't put on a strange voice. I think when you come from up north, I think everyone thinks you've got a strange voice.
Oh,
But again, I've still heard that though. I've heard preachers, like I've had a coffee with a preacher, and then heard him preach, and it's like, oh,
Totally
you've
different.
been took over by the ghost of some preacher from like the 1840s. It's like, oh,
Oh,
crazy. And again, exaggerated mannerisms, and again, so for me, I think the stuff that you do that you can get a hold on, but
yeah,
having said that, you can't be too nervous about everything, because at the end of the day, we just got to go out and be you as well, don't you? So
yeah, yeah,
it's the
yeah,
things we can monitor and change that are annoying,
yeah,
and then the things that are just us, and then hopefully, if you pray enough, then people will. If you're faithful enough to the gospel, people will see past whatever you're wearing,
yeah,
however you speak, your accent, or whether you pronounce your
yeah,
words right or not.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but again, I think it's been, I don't know, just remarkable how Spurgeon was training people to reach the majority of people in the UK, which would have been working class at the time, and I think now we're pretty much the
yeah.
majority of people today.
Mm.
And again, I think it's a universal thing. When I spoke to some uh, teachers of preaching at various colleges throughout the UK, who their role is lecturers in preaching, they said that what we classed as working class culture was universal. That it's only in the church that the emotional preaching is kind of frowned upon. So do you know what I mean? I think what he was saying was that what we like out of preachers, the characteristics of working class preachers, uh, generally that style of speaking is popular across all cultures. It's just in the church when it's preaching that it becomes a bit more staged and
Yeah,
not staged, more kind of refined and uh, what's it, conservative. People, some of that will be because they don't want to distract
yeah,
people from the gospel. Others, it's because they don't want to bring attraction to themselves instead of the gospel. But then others of it is, I think it's just culture within the church is more reserved and more conservative. But the same people who would preach conservatively might love a comedian who
yeah,
displays all those characteristics
yeah,
that we find so attractive as working class congregations.
yeah, yeah.
Mad. Oh well, that was interesting, Ruther. We'll
I
bring
found that
this.
good. That was good. That I enjoyed that.
Yeah,
I'm going to go back to read a bit more about Spurgeon and preaching as well. I'm going
yeah,
to read the paper again.
yeah. Well, definitely. I'm going to put that. I'll put the paper online. Uh, I'll give you a link to this paper on this podcast so you can download it and read it to your leisure. But I'd also suggest reading Spurgeon and the Poor and Spurgeon the Pastor. They're two books that are very helpful, and also Spurgeon's letter to my students. Them are absolutely hilarious. Them, but
Yeah,
full of tips, but also quite humorous.
yeah, I've got that one.
Have you got that one? Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll put some links below the podcast.
good lad.
Awesome, brother. Thanks for your time, and we'll chat soon, eh?
Cheers, mate. God bless, brother.
God bless, brother. Bye bye.
Bye.